How's it? My name is Hugh, and in this video, I had the opportunity to sit down with somebody I spoke to way back in the day on the podcast. And back then, he was a very successful currency trader. He traded the news, he traded short term, and he was basically a fundamental analysis guy. He even had a course around it. So, what made him move away from that into something else? And that's what we're going to talk about in this conversation, why he moved, why it was a better fit for him. And I think this is a great opportunity to see that even if you're successful in a certain type of trading, if it's not matching the way you want to live and the way you see the markets, then it is possible to change. And if you're trading a market and you haven't been successful at it, then maybe it's time to consider another market that you might be more aligned to. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Jarratt Davis.
I'm here with Jarratt Davis. It's been a while since we talked, huh?
It is. I mean, maybe 10 years, right? Something like that.
Yeah, quite a while. So, what you been up to? Maybe introduce yourself for people who don't know you.
Yeah. So I basically, when I first spoke to you, I was a professional currency trader. Um, and I did that since 2008. And basically, I kind of retired from that in 2018. I think we spoke in, was it 2014 or 2015, maybe?
Yeah, somewhere around
Um,
there.
Around that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I basically retired from that in 2018. And then since then, I've basically been focused on, I mean, when people ask me, I simplify it. I basically tell people that I buy and sell businesses.
Hmm.
So yeah, I've got a framework for doing that, which is basically looking for undervalued businesses. And businesses are undervalued basically because there's kind of an issue going on there. There's some problem
Hmm.
basically. And the two ways I do that are one through the stock market. So I look for stocks that are selling way below the intrinsic value of the underlying business. And then I also do small business acquisition as well. So I'll buy whole businesses um, from private owners as well. Um, and I call it special situation investing. So there's always a special, they're not off the shelf. You can't just go find them, but um, you can find them if you look hard enough. And that's basically what I'm doing now, essentially.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, do you ever buy enough shares to take over the business?
Well, no, not right now.
Hmm.
That's probably like a medium-term goal to kind of start doing that. Um, but that's kind of like we'd be activist investing. So what we do with the stocks right now is we just buy. We'd be a minority shareholder,
Hmm.
and then we just have to kind of. So if there's an issue, right, the management team, we have to wait patiently for the management team to resolve that issue.
Hmm.
But then obviously as you get bigger, you can start taking a larger and larger kind of piece of that business and then being a bit more activist. You have the kind of authority to kind of encourage the management team to kind of do the right thing. But yeah, we don't do that at the moment, but that's kind of definitely on the that's one of the kind of strategies that we kind of want to kind of grow into, basically.
Okay, cool. So the stock side is more just investing in the stock and not really you kind of keep
Just
them
wait,
separate.
yeah, just waiting for the
Yeah.
mispricing to be correct. It probably takes about 2 or 3 years for the kind
Oh,
of price to kind of correct. So you just
okay.
have basically the key to investing in the stocks, you have to be patient,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how'd you get into this?
So I was basically trading, um, so I was trading currencies, and I don't know if you remember this, but the S&B, remember when the S&B had a floor on the Euro Swiss that they kind of pegged it to 120 against the euro,
Mm,
um, and so basically that was a hard floor. So the market wanted to sell that pair, and the Swiss National Bank didn't want to let the price go below that level. So it's kind of like a no lose trade really, because as long as you basically bought at that level, the Swiss National Bank were going to print money to defend it. So
mm,
it's and then the market would sell it. So it's kind of like in this like 10 or 20 pip range for years.
mm,
Um, and so they were like, we're never going to remove that floor. This is set in stone. And then literally about 2 days after they said that, they removed it by surprise, and
mm,
that basically just tanked the whole currency market. I mean, you probably know there's a broker called FXCM,
mm,
and at that time they were probably the biggest retail. They were like $1 billion business, and they basically went bankrupt overnight because of that. And then there was a big hedge funds that went bankrupt. Lots and lots of businesses went under because suddenly there was, the price just went so far that no one had any liquidity. And the liquidity providers went out of business. So, for example, if you had a stop loss in, that didn't mean anything because if the liquidity provider went out of business, then there was no one to honor the other side of your
mm.
position, right?
Yeah.
So literally people were getting wiped, just got wiped out. Now I wasn't affected by that, but I was managing money at the time for clients, and I remember that day, and I just remember thinking like, like how absurd it was that I could have like almost 10 years worth of my capital was all in there, all my clients' capital was in there, and then literally that could have just wiped us all out. 10 years worth of work just gone.
Hmm.
And I just remember thinking that was just too, like, it's absurd to try and build a business on a base that can be swept away like that,
Hmm.
basically.
Hmm.
So that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. Up to that, it was kind of, you've traded FX, right? It's very intense. So the only way I know how to make money from currencies is to basically watch the market 15 hours a day. I mean, I've still got the 6 screens here that I
Hmm.
used, and you're just kind of watching the news and just waiting for something to kind of change the sentiment and then jump in. And again, that gets pretty tiring after like 10 years of doing that. So
Hmm.
there was like all those reasons. I was kind of just like, you know what, I'm kind of done with that way of working. So I wanted to try and find something that kind of was similar to what I did with investing, but more rather than the day trading high intensity. I wanted to kind of move more towards like a more passive investing type
Hmm.
situation. So I'm still technically trading because I'm buying something and selling it when it goes higher, but it just takes a lot longer for that to play out now.
Hmm.
And it's not quite so, you haven't got to be watching it. If you invest into a business, you haven't got to be watching it every day, 15 hours a day. It's just kind of like a lot more of a, I'm going to say relaxing way to do it. So
Yeah.
that was why I transitioned. And the reason how I got into business was like, I just, when that day happened, I was just like, I need to kind of shift my strategy here.
Hmm.
And in my head, I was just like, well, the best investment that you can have is a business, right? Because it cash flows. You haven't got to watch it. So if you have a portfolio of businesses and then you use the money that they make to buy another bit, more businesses, it's like a well diversified kind of solid strategy, basically.
Hmm.
Obviously, I've got a passion for business as well, so that's kind of why I kind of went in that direction, basically.
Oh, I see. Cool. So if I remember correctly, you primarily used fundamental analysis to trade FX, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that
So I'm
really
looking for the
translated over to buying businesses then, I guess.
yeah. So it's exactly the same, right? It's the fundamental.
Hmm.
So what you're looking at is so with the currency, you were looking at things like interest rates, inflation. Um, well, with currencies, what you actually doing was kind of it was more like game theory. So it was more like this is what the market is expecting right now,
Hmm.
and then you're waiting for something to happen that the market is not expecting or is out of line with that expectation. So an oversimplified example would be the market is waiting for, the market expects the Bank of England to hike their rate, right, at the next meeting. And then the Bank of England come out and say they might cut their rate.
Hmm.
That would be a totally unexpected. That would cause a move that you could jump into in the short
Hmm.
term. Um, so yeah, but it was looking at those fundamentals rather than looking at the squiggly line on the chart. It was looking at the
Hmm.
fundamental reasons of why the price is being moved up and down. And so for businesses, the same. It's like the price is here. If the price is 10, but I know that the business is worth 20 because it's just simplify it down. You can have literally very often you find a business selling for 10, but it'll have 20 in the bank. So
Hmm.
it's like you can buy a business for less than the value of its cash. So it's like,
Hmm.
again, fundamentally more than the price. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was a good crossover.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So what I'm sure there must have been a hard transition from trading to your current business. So what kind of brought you through that? What kind of mindset did you have around that? Or was that something that's always been in you?
I think it was well, I mean, it was difficult in a way because obviously the whole business was set up around FX. So I
Hmm.
had like a team, I had people, I had, it wasn't just me, I had like a whole business running around it. So from that perspective, it was difficult because you're kind of trying to unwind all that whilst making sure that everyone's okay. And, like it's a very difficult thing in that. And it was like, what's the right way to do this? You don't just want to turn the lights off and send everyone home, it's,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it was a very difficult, that from that perspective, it was a difficult transition. But in terms of knowing what I wanted to do, the business side of things was just um, like business is what I enjoy, basically.
Hmm.
So I knew knowing where to go was kind of the easy part, but navigating that was quite tricky because it was there's a lot of different obstacles in the way to do that.
Hmm.
And also, like, well, I remember when I first did it, I was like, right, I'm going to set up because I used to manage money for clients, right?
Hmm.
And So my first idea was I'm going to just basically do the same thing, manage money, but we're going to go and do this different strategy here. We're going to buy and sell businesses. And one of the things that really surprised me was, I mean, it shouldn't surprise me looking back, but it did, was that the kind of people who invested with me over on the currency side were kind of all of a sudden like, well, that's not what you do, you know.
Mm.
We want to
Hmm.
invest in FX. And it was kind of like a bit of a shock, kind of, you know, people kind of associated me with one thing, but this is now I want to do something completely different.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, there was a few different reasons why it was a difficult transition, but, you know, it just took a while, but yeah, we got there in the end.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was looking on your website. You also consult with businesses, right?
Yeah. So
What
we
do you do
do,
around
yeah, go
that?
on. Sorry. Yeah. So we do like, so we basically, obviously on the stocks is the one side. So we look for undervalued stocks there. But then on the other side, we do the small business because like there's a part of me that does like a little bit of action.
Mhm.
And with the stocks, you kind of, once you found it, you just sit on it and wait. It's kind of like patience isn't an issue for me, but at the same time, I do like to feel like I'm being productive in some way. So the
Mhm.
small business acquisition is kind of like a nice complement to that because it's the same principle. You're looking for the same things, but it's on a much smaller scale. And it, you know, going back to what you said at the beginning about activism and having a hand in actually controlling the situation, with those issues that are in small businesses, we are basically responsible for actually turning that around and doing something to make that kind of that change to increase the value of the business.
Mhm.
And so with that side of the thing, we also do, we get owners coming to us and say, I want to sell, but there's this problem. And sometimes they just want help finding, you know, we had one recently, he wants to sell his business. He has the understanding that he wants to sell to a competitor, but he was very unsure how to do that without giving the competitor all of his kind of client book. And, you know, he's paranoid about the competitor just pretending wanting to buy and then poaching all his business.
Oh,
So
yeah,
we
okay.
do the consulting side is to kind of go, okay, you don't want to sell to us, that's fine, but we can help you achieve the exit you want. We can kind of, obviously we've got a lot of experience, we've got a lot of connections, and there's things we can help you with that you might not have there on your own.
Mhm.
So yeah, the consulting side is just for kind of those special situations where they don't really want to, they kind of know what they want to do, but they don't know how to do it basically. And we can just
Mhm.
help them navigate that, those obstacles essentially. So we do, yeah, the consulting is kind of a little bit of part of what we do as well.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. Has business been picking up or has it been slower? What do you think?
To be honest, um, when interest rates went up,
Mhm.
there was a lot more businesses that kind of struggled because particularly businesses with debt, because suddenly they're like
Mhm.
they're going along, the debt's fine, and then all of a sudden the interest rate goes up, the debt payments go up. And one of the things we found is a lot of um, owners kind of, and then you get this like kind of like perfect storm where the owner kind of get to retirement age, they want to exit the business, but now they're in a situation where the business is actually at existential risk now because the interest rates have gone up, and now they're not sure they can even keep operating because of the extra
Mhm.
payment, the debt payments.
Mhm.
Um, and then creditors might not be very willing to help, basically. And so there was actually a big uptick in that kind of thing. So we've, you know, kind of working with a few people to help with that kind of scenario. So it kind of has picked up, got a little bit busier, and I think that the main reason is the interest rate
Interest
environment
rates.
has kind of made it a bit more difficult, particularly for smaller businesses to kind of carry on.
Mhm. So if somebody's in that situation, is there something that you can talk about right now that you can help them with, or is it kind of like a case by case basis?
Yeah, everything is a case by, so we call it special situation investment because every single case is a special situation.
Mhm.
That's kind of why I like it because it's like you got to find these little kind of weird, you know, scenarios that you
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
work with. But like if some, you know, for example, one of the examples that I was just mentioned earlier, we kind of had a situation where the creditors were like, well, this is the situation. We have to, you know, we have to kind of foreclose almost on the business. We have to kind of push that towards a liquidation, or we're not going to budge basically on that. Um, but then when I came in, there was a kind of a conversation, kind of the tone of the conversation changed because in that scenario, it can get quite aggressive. If the creditors like, you owe us this, the kind of owners like, well, you know, we can't. It's like a stalemate, kind of a bit of more of a kind of confrontation. Whereas when a
Mhm.
third party comes in and says, look, we're interested in acquiring this. We want to make sure you get paid. We want to make sure you get something. We want to make sure he can get his exit. We want to make sure all these people can keep their jobs. There's a little bit more of an openness to do a negotiation and discussion there. So sometimes just our presence around the table is kind of what's needed to kind of get the wheels turning and get that situation resolved, basically, I would say.
Hmm.
That's probably the biggest one, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. Uh, what do you enjoy most about this?
I think I think what I enjoy most is different every time, it's like you
Mm,
might get,
challenge.
yeah, like it's a totally different, there's different businesses, there's different scenarios, different problems. And particularly when you come a problem that someone, because obviously business owners are not stupid, right? So
Mm,
that someone will always try and solve the problem on their own first. And then when they've got to the point where they're like, I don't know what to do, and then it's like that's a really generally tricky issue to try and figure out. Um, but yeah, that kind of everything's different. It's all kind of a little bit unique. Um, yeah, I enjoy that process actually. I just enjoy really finding things that most people may have missed. Like for
mm,
example, with the stocks on the stock side, we found this business that I mean it's almost unbelievable, but the business was selling for like $200 million for the whole business. But it made like $70 million a year in free cash flow, right? So it was a cash
mm.
machine basically.
Yeah.
And it had $200 million in the bank in cash. So
Wow.
you imagine you pay 200 million, you get the cash, and you get the 70 million for free, right? A
Hmm.
year. So it's like, okay, that's interesting. But when we started digging into that, we actually found that what was even better than we first thought, because that business would stack the cash up on its balance sheet. And then after every 2 or 3 years, it wouldn't know what to do with it. So it would just send it back to the shareholders. And so it would send like 150 million back to the shareholders as it stacked up every year. So if you, when we analyze that, we look back over the last 7 or 8 years, and the dividend yield, including special dividends, which aren't reported, if you look at trading and stuff like that, you don't see special dividends. It only shows you the normal ones.
Hmm.
And so over that 7 or 8 years, the average dividend yield is like 40 or 50% based on
Wow.
the low stock price. So it's
Yeah.
just like, but no one would ever show you that. You can only find that by digging around in little places that no one looks.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and that's a really cool, stuff like that. I suppose that's what I enjoy the most, really.
Yeah, that's really cool. How would you compare this business to the FX trading? Is it
It's just like FX is just intense.
okay?
The way I did it was intense. The only way I know how to make money from FX is to keep your eye on the market, wait for something to happen, and
Hmm.
jump in and trade it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but even like let's say even like a longer term position, right? You'd be holding it. And I remember this one time I woke up at I was waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, check my phone, what's going on, and the position's down. You're not getting back to sleep again now after that. And
Mm,
it's just like I just remember thinking at that time, I was like, this is a really unhealthy way to live. Like it's a really unhealthy lifestyle.
sure.
Um, and the other thing about the FX is it constantly consumes your energy. I almost think of it like, marketing. So you've got content marketing where you create a blog post once and then it just continually brings you traffic, right? Or you've
Hmm.
got social media like Twitter where you have to constantly pump out content
Hmm.
to keep the algorithm fed. And FX is a little bit like that. It's like to keep that money flowing in, you have to constantly keep, you take a trade, you cash it out, you've got to go again, and again and again. And it's like constantly sucks your energy. Whereas this business is like once you've invested into a business, there's nothing more to do. You have to just let it play out basically, and then
Hmm.
you cash out and then you go again. So it's just a lot less intense, I would say. So I
Mm,
do much prefer this way, but I can understand how someone who really loves a lot of action would prefer FX, to be fair. But
yeah.
this definitely suits my personality a bit better, especially as I'm getting older.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you always been like a person who wanted to find the the weird little details and um figure out stuff that people don't know about?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think that's because I started trading FX in 2000 and I mean, I started trading professionally in 2008, but like I was obviously in and out between 2005, 2006. So I was kind of in and around it.
Hmm.
Um, and at that time, that was actually kind of a little niche.
That was
I
pretty
mean,
early.
it sounds a bit
Yeah.
weird to say it now, but at that time, 2005, 6, 7, 8, it was like a niche
Yeah.
thing. You talk to people and say, "What do you do?" It's like, "Oh, I trade currencies on the internet." They're like, "What?" Like, so I guess that was kind of cool having that little, that was something I found way back then. Um, yeah, I kind of enjoy that. Um, I guess looking back, it is kind of a little trait of mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you do that as a kid too, or not so much?
Um, no, not so much. I mean, I don't recall anything really. I mean, it's funny. I do remember when I was younger, like when I was at school, I was trying to. I used to. I always wanted to trade stocks,
Hmm.
and I was interested in the stock market. And I remember I used to buy the Financial Times, a big, big pink newspaper, and try and I just remember looking at all the numbers, and it just meant nothing to me.
Hmm.
And it was just confusing, basically. Um, but I guess that's kind of I guess I kind of was trying to search and look for something, but it was just kind of, it didn't come till a lot later till I have a bit more understanding, like years later. But yeah, I was kind of looking at that stuff when I was younger,
Hmm.
um, but it didn't really go anywhere at that time.
Yeah. Would you say when you're younger, you had the same like mental fortitude to keep going, or did you develop that over the years?
Yeah, I think one of the things that this has taught, so one of the things that the transition taught me from FX um to businesses has been that, like, this what I'm doing now really suits my personality a lot more. Like FX was particularly, so we had an office in London and we used to go down there, we'd be other traders down there, and it'd be like quite frenetic, and the type of people that you would meet there were very kind of different to me.
Hmm.
Um, and it was very like, what I've learned is that this is much more fitting with my personality. Um, so I kind of, but like, you don't know until you know, right? You just kind of
Yeah.
go and
Yeah.
find these things, and then when you find it, you kind of feel like that's a fit. So yeah, like it's definitely more of a, that, like, I haven't changed in that respect. I've always been someone who prefers kind of the quiet. I like to kind of be in my own space. So sitting in a room, quiet room, just looking for things is
Hmm.
like perfect for me, or but yeah, it's always been like that. It's just kind of never, it took a while and a lot of experience to kind of consciously realize it, I suppose.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, same here. All right, cool. So, where could people find you if they want to talk to you about, possibly selling their business or getting some help with their business or anything like that?
Yes. So the website is asac.group, asac.group. You go through there, and then we can just, if you want to sell a business, if you're interested in help, or we want some help with selling your business, just make an inquiry and we'll go from there. I mean, it's a very niche thing, right? So you don't get, it's not like we're getting like 20 leads a day.
Hmm.
Um, but they are out there and we do get regular inquiries. So yeah, if you want to go there and check it out,
Cool.
feel free.
Yeah. What's your biggest goal for the next like 5 years?
I think basically the goal for the next 50 years is just to compound the capital. So
Mm.
keep scaling up. So going back to the beginning of the conversation, like at the moment, we want to get to that point where we can take activist positions in a publicly listed
Mm.
business. We want to try and then we can have more control of the outcome, right? Um, and then we want to start buying the businesses whole. So just to keep doing what we do, but what we do now is perfectly scalable, and we just keep doing that
Hmm.
basically. So yeah, next 5 years, I guess, probably do a few more acquisitions and just take larger positions in the publicly listed companies that we have as well,
Hmm.
and just keep going in that direction.
Okay, cool. Well, it's great to talk to you again, Jarrett. Thanks for coming
You too,
on.
Hugh. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.